Demo Disc 2 of the official UK PlayStation magazine would see access to 5 different titles, with 2 of them being rolling demos with Striker and Air Combat, and 3 playable demos with Rayman, ESPN Xtreme games and Jumping Flash, that added a different variety of different styles that would present something for all types of players. The rolling video demo of Striker 96 would just present a short preview of some of the gameplay elements within the full game that sees 2 teams battling it out in a full match scenario. While it is cut short after a few moments, it just gives a visual representation of what you would get in the full game. If you're familiar with the Striker series, even dating back to earlier consoles, it is pretty much more of the same, but it did try to evolve a little bit, adding in more 3D elements, but the sprite characters on the screen are still 2D. It's a tricky game, and often seen as one of the most difficult games to get to grips with in terms of soccer games on the PlayStation, but it was also one of the earliest soccer games to ever be released on the console back in the day. But one of the unique aspects that did follow through from this version of the game, even from the previous versions, is the ability to direct the ball upon striking it. So once you hit the ball with power, you can still change the course of where it's going to go, so you could swerve it in any direction, which could definitely help you with scoring goals. Mind you, it's still tricky to master if you can hold on to the ball long enough, which generally is very hard to do in this game. Not the best soccer game on the system by any means, but it is a very early representation of what was possible with the PlayStation.
Oh, what a great effort. That's a great leap. Goal! Oh, that's magnificent. Good play. It's a long ball. Oh, he was well up there. Goal!
The Air Combat rolling demo would only show a portion of the intro sequence to the game, kind of like an introduction showcasing all of the fighter pilot jets that you could definitely get to play as within the full game itself. So with this full motion video, it just kind of gives you a brief overview of the graphical detail of some of the FMV sequences that most of these games around this time started to have, to set the idea or concept of what the game was going to be like upon playing it. It's very short, but it definitely gives you an idea of what was possible within the full game, which moves on quickly to the start screen of the game, but from that point on the demo ends. Jumping Flash would be one of the first ever fully 3D platform games ever to be released on any system in 1995, and would be seen as a hidden gem on the platform, taking on the role of a mechanical robot style creature that can jump to massive heights around a variety of different polygonal style levels where you have to complete objectives by collecting items and pods that are in the shape of carrots, and you need to collect a number of them in order to unlock the end portion of the level so that you can reach the goal, with the main game comprising of 6 different worlds and each level having 3 different stages with a boss battle at the end of each stage. There would be additional sequels that would later find their way onto the PlayStation, and it was seen as a popular series, but it just fell into the realm of obscurity for quite a number of years. But it was recently revived on the PlayStation 5 that you can now get on the PlayStation Network, and the game also now has trophy support, and it does have access to modern control systems, which does make it a wee bit easier and more approachable for players to get used to. Back in the day it was a marvel, and while it's considered that the controls didn't technically age well because it is quite clunky and sluggish in many ways, it still gave a very early glimpse as to what was possible within 3D games and what was also possible with the ideas behind titles that were being released on the PlayStation. It's one of those interesting titles that, if you want to see the early concepts of 3D platformers, this is one of the best examples that you'll find out there. And with this demo in general, you get to play in 2 levels from one of the worlds, where you get to play through a full section where you have to collect all of the Jetro pods in order to unlock the goal section to move to the next stage, and from there you will end up having to then fight a boss, which once you defeat it, or if you end up losing all of your lives or all of your health, it will be game over. But if you know what you're doing and you know how to play the game, it ain't overly difficult. But you can only imagine the first time you played the demo, it can be very overwhelming and intimidating to say the least, because you don't really know how to use the controls. I found that to be the case when I first played the demo way back in Christmas of 1996, as the demo was also included in the original Demo 1 disc that would have come packaged with the PlayStation that a friend of mine had gotten when he got his PlayStation over the holidays that year. And I thought it was epic, but yeah, it was very tricky because I was only getting familiar with getting used to the PlayStation control system, but even getting to utilise 3D space or moving around in 3D spaces was a new concept for me, and this would have been one of the earliest examples that I had the privilege of experiencing. Tough, very challenging, but very cool for its time. And to be honest, it's still cool even today. So whether you get to play the game on a demo, which I would recommend that you do, even just to go back to play a lot of these old demos, it's very cool. But you can also play the full game, like I said, on the PlayStation 5 now, so it's definitely worth a look. ESPN Xtreme Games, even known as One Xtreme in other regions, was a very interesting game back in the day. I remember my first experience with this also being on the original Demo 1 CD that would have been packaged with the console, and at first glance you can definitely see its influences, because I grew up even playing games like of the Road Rash series, with Road Rash 2 more so on the Sega Mega Drive, so you can definitely see the references here. The only difference is really being that the level design is in 3D in some context, but all of the characters, sprites and some of the features within the levels are still in 2D. Another game that also comes to mind that this game was heavily referenced by was known as Skitchin, that would have released on the Sega Mega Drive a few years earlier, and that is considered a very underrated title yet hidden gem on the system. So you can definitely see where it got its influences. You have extreme sports but with a Road Rash vibe. Yeah, it's very cool, although very tricky, quite difficult to play. I remember for years trying to master this demo and still only a handful of times ever managing to win it, and I managed to do it again on this playthrough, which doesn't always happen. There is a lot of luck involved, because the second you crash you slow down, the AI opponents are passing you already to knock you off track pretty much straight away. So you just have to have your wits about you, be aware of your surroundings, but also be ready to time your attacks as well, because your opponents are going to attack you when they get close. So if you can manage to get to them before they get to you and knock them off balance, you have a better chance of winning. But like I said, a lot of it is down to pure luck. The one thing I will say about this demo for the time when I first seen it is I was blown away by the visual detail, because it did remind me of the Road Rash games, especially when you were racing through the likes of the mountainscapes and country roads. When you seen everything that was happening behind the scenes or in the background, it just added so much more appeal to the experience, because the visual detail for its time, especially for a PS1 game back in the day, was very cool indeed. It just had a very cool vibe. Even though the game was difficult and tricky as hell to master, I always thought it was very cool. I have covered this along with its sequels, 2 Xtreme Xtreme and 3 Xtreme in previous videos on the channel. I'll leave links to them here in the description. But this is definitely one of the earliest examples of extreme sports on the PlayStation, as there would be many more that would go on to be very, very popular on the console itself. But this was just another demo that highlighted the popularity of what the PlayStation could do and how successful it was going to be at that time. Because in the first few months of the console's release, you could already see very quickly where it was going, and games like this definitely helped to propel that to where it would go. Definitely worth a try if you like the road rash vibe, that's for sure. Rayman would be the first game in a very popular series that started off life during the 32-bit era, releasing in 1995 on a variety of different consoles at the time, even with the likes of the Panasonic 3DO, and later ported to the PlayStation. And for its time, the visual detail on display was nothing short of stunning. Like, it was one of the best looking and visually stunning 2D games you'd ever seen. Even to this day, it still is. The one thing with this game though is it's also one of the hardest games you'll ever play. I remember around the time when we got our PlayStation way back in 1997, one of my brothers managed to get a copy of this for Christmas, and yeah, it was very, very cool. But even to this day, we still never really managed to finish it, other than the fact is using some of the cheat codes to allow you to skip the levels or to use the level select function. It was the only really way that you could have a chance of actually finishing the game, because through skill alone it still wasn't enough. It was such a difficult game, and it still is even today. But even going back to play this demo for this video, it still looks absolutely stunning. Luckily enough, with later sequels in the Rayman franchise, that would later be rectified, as yes, there would be challenging games, but they wouldn't be crazy difficult like this one. But with this demo itself, it was timed, so you had to work your way up utilising a seed to generate plants so that you could climb up different cliffs. So you had to try and reach the top within the time limit, but you only had between 1.5 to 2 minutes, so you didn't have a lot of time, and the chances of you completing the level were very slim. You wouldn't really get that far at all. But still, it was a very cool first attempt or first interaction to the Rayman series. The 5 demo games displayed here showcase different scenarios that range from sports to flight combat, platforming from both 3D and 2D perspectives, that offered loads of different dynamics and appeal, with some visually stunning highlights and some of the best looking games for their time, all challenging in their own right, but definitely gave you a glimpse of what was to come with the PlayStation. With that being said, I will be covering a lot more of these demo CDs from back in this era now in future videos, so make sure to keep watching. And in the meantime, if you would like to see other demo discs that I have covered in previous videos, you can check out this playlist right here. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.